This is an interview with Cecil L. Wittson, Chancellor Emeritus, University of Nebraska Medical Center. I'm Bernice Hetzner, Emeritus Professor of Library Science. This is December 6th, 1979. Dr. Wittson, you grew up in South Carolina. You went to school there. You spent some time in New York and in the Navy. How did it happen that someone who had spent most of his life on the East Coast ended up in the prairies of Nebraska?
Back in 1949, I was approached to consider a position on the faculty here. I was still full-time in psychiatry. I assumed that Bob Wigton, Sr.,
Yes.
must have suggested my name. I had known him in the Navy during World War II. And then Chancellor Gustafson called me one day and asked me would I stop by to see him if I passed through Omaha, which I did.
You were going through Omaha on the
Plane, yeah, to the
trip
West
to
Coast.
someplace
Yeah, I went.
on your own.
At that
Yeah.
point, I was making periodic trips to San Diego to the consultant research to the Surgeon General in the Navy, and was making periodic trips out there. So I stopped by, and Chancellor Gustafson, as you may know, was a biochemist.
Yes.
And was one of the, really should be listed as a co-developer of synthetic estrogens.
I don't think that's generally known.
No, I don't think so, but he really was, and I knew of Gustafson, and to my surprise, he knew of me because I wrote one of the earliest papers, clinical papers, on the use of the then new synthetic estrogens. And in any case, I met Chancellor Gustafson, came down and met the dean, whose name I can't remember now, the general.
Harold Luth.
Harold Luth, yeah. And despite that, I made another trip out where I met the faculty, and during the World War II, I had an opportunity to be on the cutting edge of new developments in psychiatry. I'd gone back to New York, and I realized that New York was such a large place that you couldn't possibly move it.
You mean
Forward.
the metropolitan area?
Well, I meant
here.
the state of New York.
The state of New York.
Yeah. First place, you couldn't know the key people because there were too many of them, and they changed, and it was just too large a place. And I was impressed by the people in Nebraska, not the doctor, not just the medical profession, but the people out in town that I had met. That Nebraska was still a frontier.
Yes.
That the people in Nebraska were pioneers still in spirit. And the state mental health system in this state was so low you couldn't do it any damage.
You
could only do it
that,
good. Yeah. And that also that the medical college was a weak school, and that if you got something started in psychiatry, there wouldn't be enough strength in the college to beat you down as it was in Cornell and Columbia.
You weren't afraid that there wasn't enough strength to hold you up?
Well, I was young and confident enough that it would be, with the support of the kinds of people I sensed were in Nebraska, that you could go ahead and develop it, and you wouldn't get swallowed up in very strong intra-campus politics.
Yes.
And there was such a great need in this state to do something. But I thought this was a good place to come.
Well, certainly the climate here on the campus was not the best because the dean left shortly after that. And as I understand, the psychiatric unit at Douglas County Hospital was in trouble. Was it in trouble then?
Yes, it was in serious trouble. It had never gotten airborne, right? Had a almost, with all due respect to Goodwill, it had Goodwill furniture and equipment, and had no faculty to speak of, except depended like the rest of the school on the voluntary faculty. Had one man from Hastings who came down and was normally in charge, good fellow, Sandrilla, but he wasn't able to give much time, and it really didn't amount to anything.
Well, he just came in on a part-time basis?
Yeah, he wasn't here full-time.
The
the budget, they had no budget. I found out how much money they had, which was the total budget from the university part came from one grant, the undergraduate teaching grant, and was less, the total budget was less than what I was making in New York at the time.
You certainly were a pioneer.
Well, I was just young and felt wasn't anything you couldn't do if you tried hard.
Do you think that the psychiatrists in Omaha, and I'm particularly thinking about Dr. A.E. Bennett, who had gone.
He had just left.
Yes, but he left it, as I understand it, because of disagreement with some other
That's right,
people in the profession here. Do you think that turmoil had anything to do with the situation at Douglas County? Or was that...
Well, you see, it was just physically located at Douglas County. The space that actually was rented. There was resentment, and there was no idea that the university, that the medical college, would develop a strong department. And there was a clash a little over a year after I got here with the men out in practice.
Oh.
It was a very severe clash.
Was that before or after Douglas County gave the...
After. And after I had gotten the promise of the first $250,000 per building. That's what they promised me first, $250,000 per building.
Well, you received the promise of the money for a new psychiatric unit. Did that create the problem?
Well, then they realized it was going too strong, yeah.
Yes, and then they began to big
and
wrestles.
I insisted that I become chairman of the department. That I wouldn't. That brought the case, yeah. And I think they then realized that it wouldn't be run by the firm, the department. And then there was a resentment from the man over at Creighton.
Oh.
I used to get calls at home, and several of them, they'd be nameless. The man would get too much under the belt, a few drinks, and call me and threaten me, actually.
Oh, really?
It wasn't fair for a man to bring into Omaha someone who was trained as I had been. And they hadn't had the opportunity for that training. There was a couple of men on the Creighton faculty.
Yeah.
And one of them later, turned out to be sick.
Yes, yes.
But I thought, there were two of them that would call me periodically.
Were they both in the same office?
They were both in Omaha.
Yeah. All right.
Then there was some resentment, as far as psychiatry, from two of the state hospital superintendents. One of them had gone so far, and I have somewhere in my files a copy, having printed an academic type of catalog, which he was going to develop an Institute of Psychiatry outstate.
Oh.
And I didn't know about that. And he fought me as far as he could. That's one of the stories I still don't want to tell in full, but anyway.
You must have had the tenacious.
Yeah, I wish you ought to have that here. I secured that copy. It was actually printed.
Well,
The curriculum.
that should go into
Yeah,
our
but I don't know
archives,
whether I
so
looked
that-
for it a few months ago. Several moves, and I don't know. I may still
Was
find
it connected with that sanitarium, a sanitarium in Lincoln?
No.
It was part of
He
that.
accidentally, Royal was a supporter.
Oh.
The story that has actually nothing to do with this, but until I went to the Pacific,
Yeah.
and my orders were in code, except a couple of things. One was relieve, among other duties, relieve Commander Royal and the submarine. And the rest was in court because I went out as a position that never had a psychiatrist that fleet to the Pacific, and that included taking over the submarine forces too.
Sure.
And I never got there for a variety of reasons. Never got to relieve him. So he stayed around about 4 or 5 months after he had gotten his orders back to the States. And it's because that fellow Wittson never relieved him.
I see.
And when I was considering the position here, and one evening there was a dinner they gave me at the Omaha Club. And I met Royal for the first time. Suddenly it dawned on him and it dawned on me who each were. He yelled all the way across the room to his wife, whatever, Polly, I think it was. Here's that son of a bitch Wittson that didn't relieve me. Incidentally, his daughter is now married to the president-elect of the American Psychiatry. No, Royal was a supporter of the school and of psychiatry, developments in psychiatry, strongly supported. We got good support out of the two principal psychiatrists in Lincoln at that time were Royal and Bob Stein.
Yes.
And Bob Stein was a very strong supporter of the medical college and of the psychiatric unit. And Bob Stein had more influence than Royal statewide. He had a good.
We have heard his name more than we have.
Yeah, well, he was active in
Yeah.
those days. I think Bob's even older than I am. They're about the same age. But
Yeah.
Bob was active at that point in state medical politics as well as Lancaster County, which was important to us because we had no real support out of the Lincoln campus.
Yeah.
And there were some other doctors that through Bob Stein I got to meet who were very important in state, Lincoln doctors.
Yeah. Well, in view of all this, how did it come about that you were able to swing the deal for the building?
All right,
building?
it was about 3:30 or quarter to 4 one afternoon. Someone downtown called me and asked me had I seen the Afternoon World Herald. And I said no, and they said, well, you better. So I got one, and then I saw the article that the county commissioners were notifying the university in a meeting that noon that we had to clear out of the county. So the next day, I remember it was raining like the devil. We got Lottie's little Plymouth, had some mud tires, mud tires. And I have his shoulder,
Yes.
who played a key part in
Yeah.
things, a very strong person.
Yes.
And a man that has never been fully appreciated on this campus, I don't think, is Mr. Saxon.
Oh yes.
He was a well-trained.
Reuben Sachs.
Yeah,
Mhm.
He was a professional engineer.
Mhm.
He was a dedicated and capable, hardworking man, and a man with a good deal of foresight. That was one reason he wasn't appreciated, because he was thinking ahead of most of the people here.
Mhm.
Well, anyway, Mr. Saxon and Abby Shoulder and I got in his little car, and we went all over the city looking for a building that might be suitable.
Mhm.
And we could find nothing. Oh, a man who was very helpful to me when I first came here and continued to be for many years was Dale Clark,
W. Dale Clark.
who was very interested in mental health, although I opposed him on his, would not go along with him on his pet project.
What was his pet project?
It was to develop a state association of mental health.
Oh.
And I opposed that because at that time that was mostly a lay organization. A lot of, well, I got many of the members were active in the association in lieu of taking psychiatric treatment.
Oh. Uh-huh.
And this was naturally. So they never got one going.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, when the organizer came in the state, I met him at the old Fontanelle Hotel and told him, "You better get out of town." Bob Wickman was with me, by the way,
Uh-huh.
because this would have swung psychiatry away from medicine. But anyway, Dale Clark advised me, and I didn't know the people in the state, and I thought I'd better get out more in the state and meet some of the key people, but I didn't want the people who newspaper headline people particularly, but the real powers. He identified them for me in the city and out in the state, that's right.
Mhm.
And then got up, which I think you ought to have here, but I can't find it. Quickly got up, mimeographed a little book I call the Black Book, because I put a black cover on it purposely. One of these notebook papers that they fold in and then you put the things in.
Oh, yes, yes. You clip them in.
Yeah,
so
we had
so.
them. And
Yeah.
I borrowed from experience I'd had in the Navy.
Mhm.
People did not understand psychiatry, had no reason to. So I thought if I were to push these statewide leaders, I had to get some quick way of
Tell him what psychiatry
what
was?
the possibility of psychiatry. So during the World War II, there was a constant running fight between the Army and the Navy on a number of things, but one was on personnel. And there was a Commission of Manpower, National Commission of Manpower. And there was always a fight, so every week, I sent the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery at their request a very brief case summary, paragraph case summary, disguised for the individual and where he's from. The worst cases that new recruits that we've gotten in.
Mm-hmm.
We call it the stinker list. So that people from the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery could then say to members of the Manpower Commission, knowing that several of them had sons who were in the Navy or that age, is this the sort of person you'd like your son to serve with? You see? They were real stinkers.
Yeah.
So what I did was take the 25 consecutive cases admitted to psychiatric unit,
Mm-hmm.
disguised them as to the origin and their names,
Mm-hmm.
and gave a paragraph description of the case. And that apparently had its effect, because for the first time some of these people, the Dale Clarks and the Al Gordons in the city, and Roman Rusker, who was, by the way, crucial in getting this thing done. He was, let's say, of all the individuals, he was the most important in those early days.
I suspected that because he was on the program in the dedication, wasn't he?
I don't remember that, but
Well.
likely to have been.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, then I started beating the bushes, and I enlisted Roman Ruska's assistance, and key people in various parts of the state. This is what's his name, who became a U.S. Senator, and a woman out of state, a rancher.
Oh, the woman? Oh, Abbott.
No, not Abbott. No,
No,
no. She lives up. She's still alive as far as I know. She's a United States Senator.
Yeah.
Oh, what the hell?
Bowring?
Bowring, yeah.
Yeah.
Eva Bowring.
Eva Bowring.
And then, I think it's misunderstood because our adversaries were trying to help the state senator from Hastings, Dick Marvel.
Marvel. Yes.
He was hot and cold. I never knew what. But when it came down to things, for instance, for the medical college, we wouldn't have this if it hadn't been for Dick Marvel. And that isn't known. I don't know if Dick would admit it now. But he rolled up his sleeves and he did some things that I'll get into that later. Dick, the key part he played.
What did Terry Carton do?
And I was just about to say, Terry Carton, as you know, was very unusual but erratic person. One of the first people I saw outstate was Terry Carton. And I had already established a base in Scottsbluff. I don't know whether you know that.
Well, I knew that you, well, I didn't know it was before the building was developed. Yeah.
One of the first things I did was go out to Scottsbluff. So I never would get going down to the railroad station to call them. The train to Scottsbluff, yes. What time's it leave? 9:30 at night or whatever it was. What time to get to Scottsbluff? We don't know. That's very variable.
Yeah, particularly in the wintertime. Right?
Yeah, it was very variable.
Yeah.
And yeah, I established this clinic at first out in the Methodist Hospital, and then at St. Mary's Hospital. And because I sat down in South Carolina and New York, particularly, the people out in the western part of the state, felt left out before the western part of the state became the industrial part of South Carolina. And same thing was true up in New York State, particularly that part of New York State near Canada. And I really weren't. The state wasn't doing much for the western part of the state. And so how are you going to get a program going? A whole third of the state is not involved. So I went out anyway, established the pain in the neck, going out there, those trips out there. And so I made most of them every day myself. I ran a clinic every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks to Scottsbluff. It took a lot of time. And that took a lot of time and endurance.
Yeah, I went out on that train.
On the train.
But anyway, in doing that, we had established what later on became very helpful for the medical center as a whole. That's really, but how do we get this? Well, then we had this unusual, which is still, I think, the only act of its sort in the United States that Roman Ruska played a very critical part in getting, the bill which established the Psychiatric Institute as a joint facility of the Board of Controllers, then called, and the University of Nebraska, and stated that the University of Nebraska, through the Psychiatric Institute and its Department of Psychiatry, well, it's Psychiatric Institute, and the Board of Control shall, not me, shall join hands. And being a lawyer's wife, you know that the difference between may and shall there.
Yes.
And that became very critical in developing this thing.
Now, was Roman Ruska in the U.S. Senate then, or
No, he was a county commissioner.
He was
a county commissioner. But he and what's the fellow's name? Not Vogel, but it was the welfare,
I know.
later focus.
Voight?
Huh?
Voight?
Yeah, something similar.
Something like that. Yeah.
Who at that time was for, but he thought it was going to be county.
Mm-hmm.
And when the university got really involved, he and fighters and began fighting the
True.
university hospital anyway because of the budget.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But Roman Ruska stuck with us all the way through, and in fact, always was for the university and for the medical center. And, I don't think his part was really ever fully recognized by people on the campus.
They probably didn't pay much attention to him until he went to Congress.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, well, anyway, I'm going to cut this a little short. They first approved the Board of Control and the Board of Regents. Yes, we would have a institution. Because the year before I got here, the Board of Control had a team of experts, consultants come in and survey the state for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they had just received the report. This was another thing I knew about coming out, that there was needed immediately a new 1,800-bed hospital in the suburbs of Omaha, which would get the fourth state hospital and add 1,800 beds.
1,800 beds.
Yeah. So I told these key leaders of the communities and of the university, Board of Control people, and the legislative leaders, particularly Dick Marble, who knew something about psychiatry, when he wanted to, had a good understanding. And he didn't get all involved in whatever got him involved, mostly. That is, they would give the university a 100-bed hospital on the campus to be operated primarily by the university, as far as the clinical programs by the university. Would cooperate with the state, that they wouldn't have to build the 1,800-bed hospital. Projected the cost over 10 years. And in fact, they would be able to drop one of the other hospitals and reduce the census by at least 50%. So that in a 10-year period, the cost of construction of the Psychiatry Institute and its operation would be less than the money they would save.
Less than the money they would spend on the 1,800.
1,800 bed and
Yeah,
plus
plus.
the ever increasing.
Yeah.
And if we turn it around where admissions would be more than the resident population, and there would be no waiting list. And for some reason or other, they believe me. But
Yeah.
I don't know what would happen if it hadn't come about in 10 years. But I said 10 years from today,
This is what we can do.
yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, this is what happened because we began reducing the population of the state hospitals in Nebraska long before the tranquilizers came into the picture. And, incidentally, that waiting list, I screened it myself. It was some 750 people on the waiting list now. And a significant proportion of them didn't need to come in because they had already been buried. They were dead.
Actually?
Yeah, actually, they've just been kept there. That's like dead people get football tickets.
Yeah.
Season tickets. Yeah, they've just been kept on the list.
Yeah.
Nobody cleaned the list up. Well, in any case, we then got it up. We got the Department of Health into it with Bill Burton.
Yeah.
And Vern Pangbon was under Christo. He was in charge of that, the Hill-Burton program.
Yes.
I got it up to $500,000. And finally to $1 million. And, but we needed $1.5 million. In fact, we needed some more than that. So designed on one side of it for, this is a little more detailed, but it's a children's division. And incidentally, in Omaha Senate, I presented this idea to the legislature. And he said, we've got a crazy doctor here, a psychiatrist from New York, in the state. He must be crazy. Had the audacity to tell the legislature today the state needed a children psychiatric unit, as if children were crazy. He didn't know this man was a child, his nephew-in-law was a child psychiatrist. So he could hardly wait to get his uncle-in-law off the phone before he called me at home and laughed like hell. He said, I thought you knew to know this right away. I said, yeah, good, because I'm meeting some key legislators again tomorrow morning early. And, well, anyway, on one side, I mean, the children. The other side was geriatric.
Yes.
Mary Prince, the great and strong supporter, was then chairman of the Board of Control, who was going to put up a third of the money. She was all for something for children, had to. Dr. Gustafson was all for something for geriatric. There was nothing in the country. And the two of them, he beat the desk. We can't, I said finally, if we don't get that extra $500,000, 250,000, it got up to 1,200,000. Either the children's section has to go, or the geriatric now. Which is it? See? Well, Gus said it will not be the geriatric, we have to have it. Mary started crying. So I got both of them. And that's, now, other strong support I ought to bring in, it came from the World Herald. And that's before Dale Clark was involved with the World Herald. He was then chairman of the board of Omaha National.
Dale Clark?
Dale Clark.
Dale Clark,
yeah. He was not connected to the World Herald at that point. And from some of the outstate papers, the one in Hastings, the one in Scotts Bluff. And from, well, anyway, that later. That's how we got it. Well, while I'm talking about it, finally we got the thing up to $1.5 million, and we were short. We had over there a patio. You know that thing in the back. You ever hear that story?
About the Gestalt therapy?
The Paragestalt. The Paragestalt therapy area. I realized that neither the Board of Control or the university would have listened to anything, have nothing to do with the patio. So I told John Latenza, Frank Latenza, it must be that word patio doesn't go over out here then. Just as air conditioned there. So give me those prints with the word left off. And he said, I'll have to call it something else, I don't know what. So Chancellor Hardin asked me at the Board of Regents meeting, was the Psychiatric Institute for the finance now? And I said, no. I said, what? I said, we haven't got money for the Paragestalt therapy area. Without a smile or anything, he said, you mean you're going to try to operate a university psychiatric facility and have no Paragestalt? He said, gentlemen, they said, okay. There wasn't much money, it was about $45,000.
At that point.
Yeah, well, anyway, that's how that came about. Now, the other thing that she mentioned was that when I was presenting the budget, in those days I had to present the budget for the, I presented the budget for the Psychiatric Institute.
At the Board of Regents or
No, at the legislature.
Legislature.
I presented the Board of Control and the Board of Regents, but the legislature. And there was no one in there at the hearing, nobody from the Board of Control, nobody from the university, nobody from the public, about 4 or 5 newspaper reporters. And they said that there's one more thing. research. You ever heard this story?
No.
There had never been any money appropriated by the legislature, the university, or anybody else for any research in human disease. In fact, very few states were doing it. New York was, and California was, and Michigan. They said, what's that? I said, well, you remember about a year ago, the government called you in special session because it was a new disease, a hog disease. Remember that? And you didn't wait for one out of every 25 hogs in Nebraska and Iowa were dying of this disease. Nobody knew exactly what it was. You didn't wait for Iowa, you didn't wait for the federal government, who met and quickly appropriated a significant sum of money. And within the year, the problem was solved, not only for Nebraska, but for Iowa and the rest of the country. Now, there is a human disease that affects 1 out of 10 people, mental disease. Money for hogs, why not human beings? The press laughed, and the chairman said, how much you want? And I told him it was $25,000 a year. And it was a big money those days, but he said, you sure that'd be enough? And I said, yes, I want to have more money than we can carefully use. He followed me out in a car, and they voted right then, but he said, if you ever pull that one again, I'll break your damn neck. So that's how we got the first research. That's the first money for research appropriated by the legislature. And we had that when we opened the institute. And that's, I went on to explain to them later that this was seed money and what I meant by seed money.
Well, now, wasn't this the first time that at least the university had ever taken or received any Hill-Burton money? It wasn't the first Hill-Burton money in the state.
Oh, no, the money had been going all over the state.
But that caused some resentment, too. Weren't there people
well, the first
around
time
that...
talked about getting grants to the Board of Control, they almost ran me out of the state. That was tainted money.
That was dirty money.
And you remember the university turned down Rockefeller money way back. You knew that.
I had heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was tainted money. And that money really was used to establish my understanding the University of Iowa Medical School. And they turned down, was it? No. And then they turned down the Jocelyn money.
Jocelyn money.
Jocelyn
I heard
money.
that money.
And it's my understanding, I never confirmed this, that the university finally accepted some Rockefeller money, but they wouldn't put the building on the campus. And that's the building that's across the street, the theater, arts building, the old one with the columns.
Oh, yes, yes.
It couldn't go on the campus, so you ought to confirm that sometime for the hell of it. I just heard that, but I've never gotten it from anybody that really knew. But they would not accept. And you know, I still run around the country with HP. I run into some groups now who won't accept federal money. It's, well, state of Arizona.
Are they
Maricopa
reluctant?
County. Thank God it was one of the easiest. Yeah, they wouldn't accept any federal money for the support of their psychiatric department. That's the Maricopa General Hospital.
Yeah.
Which made it easier to design.
Yes.
And they were quite right. They said we can, by not accepting that, we can build it for less money, less of our money.
Yes.
Which is true. Because the Epley Council, the radiology,
Yeah.
I had told the regents that I would not ask for any state money for it. Found myself $65,000 short. Of course, the Hill-Burton people hanged on with this mouth-watering to get in there. $65,000 they claimed it. But, we kept books on that, rich script. It actually cost us money. Because the little picayune things we had to change orders and whatnot.
Yeah. All the rules and regulations.
Hmm?
All the rules and regulations.
Which,
that you
yeah,
have
and
to
then
adhere to.
relatively incompetent people sticking their nose in
Yeah.
just to justify their salaries. Well, anyway, that was done. Well, now that later had its effect the campus. Let's get back to the medical school during that period of 5 years,
From 50 to 55.
50 to 55.
Mm-hmm.
During that period of time, we've changed deans, as you know.
Yes.
They were developing a sharp division between the medical school and the doctors in practice in Omaha. That was partly brought on by the attitude of the general.
Yes.
Dean, I completely block on his name because that's so
Loose.
loose. His attitude was just, he treated everybody as if they were private second class.
Oh, yes.
And he was the general.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Luth was ruthless, but he did it in a, it's not a very, I say a general. I didn't know any admirals like him in the Navy. But he was just,
Well, isn't it true that some of the men on the faculty went to Lincoln and said, we can't get along with this man?
I assume so. I never knew that personally. I wasn't involved in it because I was, you may remember, I was the first full-time man, and then they brought that obstetrician in full-time. There were problems with him,
Odell.
Odell.
Digger Odell.
I don't know whether well, I'll just say this much. I told my people, as much as there should be a relationship, that we, under no conditions, have anything to do with Odell. Because he had certain personality problems.
Yeah.
Well, this was growing, this pound gown thing was growing and getting sharper and getting partly ridiculous. There was, and I don't know if anybody's brought this out or not, it was never written, never said explicitly, but there was sort of this understanding, several of the old-time men on the faculty, that we could bring in full-time people, but they were not to be department chairmen.
Uh-huh.
Now this is understandable if you get back, put yourself back to that time. This school had always been run by, and many schools were, the one I went to, primarily by the voluntary faculty, who did it, for the most part, a good job, as far as they could. There were a few notorious exceptions.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they did a pretty good job, and they did this without any pay. The only pay they got was the prestige.
Yes.
But many of them, their real love of teaching and of young people, and their love of the profession. All right. Put those people in. Put yourself in the position of those people. And then a dean like Luth. And then bring in a man, a second full-time man, clinical man, who turned out to be a mistake.
Yes. Yes.
Then you bring in a man replacing him, like Roy Holly, who had many of the characteristics of Luth. Little regard for the feelings of
Of other people.
The importance of considering other people and having that you just don't get in a Sherman trank and run through down the street. Well, that was all understandable. Then the fact that this was a stepchild of the Lincoln campus, and it was.
Yes. chances also are that if they brought in these full-time people, they probably were younger than they, and with less experience.
Less experience and
than the
better,
old-timer.
and better paper qualifications
Yeah.
than many of them.
Yeah.
But not all. Because they were,
So didn't they all come in as assistant
yeah,
chair, vice chairman?
yeah.
Uh,
Most was vice chairman, but the
Yeah.
assistant, yeah.
Uh,
And some of them weren't very strong individuals. I'd rather not call names. But, and there was no way of attracting them at that time. Now the university still actually being starved. I mean the medical center.
yes.
The budget, as you know from the library budget, was peanuts. I felt that I could not depend on the university for anything significant. And so began to build up the department budget.
With grant funds,
Grant funds, gifts,
gifts,
state legislature.
endowments. Yeah.
Actually, by the time 5 years after the institute opened, the budget department psychiatry was more than the rest of the school.
Which didn't have
Yeah.
the relationships too right. Yeah.
Well, there was divided opinion, but not sharply divided, outstate too, about the medical school. There was a feeling, but part of that feeling was against the school, and part of it was against the loyal opposition, which worked to the advantage of the school later on. A feeling that certain people, who we named us, were using the school only and primarily for their own advantage.
Yes.
And this was somewhat true. I could but won't name the ones I knew. And
Someplace along here, the legislature was convinced to put in this $250,000 levy for capital
capital
construction
improvement,
here.
yeah. And that was primarily the work of Lowell Dunn.
Well done. Yes.
Others involved, but Lowell Dunn had
Yeah.
a big hand in it. Again, he's somebody shouldn't be forgotten.
That's right.
I mean, they-
Then it was my understanding that when I'm getting this a little out of chronological order, but that when the faculty here couldn't decide on what to do with this money,
That's right. Had a building committee.
they had a building committee, and they finally got into such a hassle that some way money, I was told, ended up building the dentistry school.
No,
No?
no,
No.
that's not true.
All right.
No, not money that was earmarked for to go here. They did use money. No, as far as I know, that was not true. And we didn't have. I've forgotten how long that $12 million levy lasted. But, and I don't.
That only lasted about 5 years,
Yeah.
didn't it?
Mhm.
I can
Well,
check back
dentistry
through
school may have come out of that, but it wasn't money that was marked for here.
Oh.
And there was actually a feeling that one of the faculty that had here couldn't decide what they really wanted, and many of them didn't want anything.
the size of the hospital, where it was to go.
Yeah,
and-
and so forth. All during that time, if you haven't, it hadn't been made available to you, you ought to have in custom records. 'Cause I think now it would be certainly under these semi-confidential records. I mean, the various accreditation reports. Now, I can just assume what the answer might be when you ask them, but I think you ought to bring it up and you ought to have them. During this time, the budget was so meager. The University Hospital, which was then a charity hospital, because that was prior to Medicare and Medicaid, and it was required almost total support, so that the hospital did take too much of the meager budget that came here, meager number of dollars. And yet, I remember shortly after I came here, I saw another thing you ought to get is the annual reports of the hospital before I began. That it was less than $5 a day per patient.
I remember when they asked the counties to reimburse at the
I'll get
amount
into
of
that
$4 a
later.
day.
Well, yeah, I'll get into that later.
Oh. Oh.
That's what the counties received. But there were many counties didn't reimburse, Douglas being one of them, and insurance companies, which I'll get into later, some of the problems. But in any case, the budget was meager, and medicine was beginning to evolve, medicine in general, very rapidly during the 50s. With the impetus of World War II, its effect on medicine, and the fact that science had developed so rapidly that the tools that medicine needed, didn't know it, but were now becoming available very rapidly. You know, medicine couldn't have gone ahead until science made it spurt ahead, which again was the impetus of World War II. You know, a great many things come out of developments, have come out of major wars.
Developments that were necessary and were pushed through
Well,
because of the...
not only
Yeah.
for medicine,
Yeah.
for the professions, for industry.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the reasons is,
Engineering,
you know,
everything.
during every major war that the world has had, the percent of male increases above the female. Did you know that?
I'd heard that.
Okay. During this time, now to bring it from 55 on up to the early 60s, during that time we began to add a few clinical full-time faculty. Most of them were there were more at the at the Psychiatric Institute than the rest of the medical center. At early part, as I said, 55, 56, 57. But we began to add them throughout various departments, and then began to fill in a little bit in the basic sciences. Not much, a few. But just what the budget was now. And when we talk about the medical school, we shouldn't forget the School of Nursing.
That's right. That's right.
Now, the School of Nursing was an old-fashioned school, still using student nurses as cheap labor.
And treating them like second-class citizens.
Yeah, treating them as handmaids.
Yeah.
And the rest of the nursing staff were treated very much that way. I suppose partly my experience in the Navy colored my attitude towards nurses. I found that the Navy had very superior nurses. You know one reason why?
Because they liked the uniforms.
Yes. Eleanor Roosevelt, out of her own pocket. Did you know that?
No, I didn't
Got
know.
a French designer to design the Navy uniform.
Well, I knew that...
She went to her husband. He thought it was a lot of foolishness. He was very busy. Wouldn't authorize, the Navy wouldn't authorize any money, so she said to hang with it and pay the designer himself. Well, we had a great bunch of nurses. Incidentally, we did not have a single pregnant Whether they were more moral or smarter, I don't know. But we did not have one. That wasn't one of the problems we had. I say there may have been one or two,
Yeah.
but I never heard of them, and I was in position to.
Uh-huh.
But they took on duties and responsibilities that were far beyond what I had seen up at Columbia Presbyterian or
Yes.
Roper in Charleston or
Mm-hmm.
Southside Hospital on Long Island,
Mm-hmm.
and did it very capably and held their own as officers.
Mm-hmm.
So I was convinced that something had to be done about the nursing school. But Miss Carr was a nice person, but she would look backward instead of forward. Well, anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself in a way, but at the Institute we developed our own nursing faculty.
Mm-hmm.
Had the first PhD nurse on the campus. And
Miss
had two
Muller?
of them. No, and
Dr.
then
Muller?
Dr. Muller and what's his name, who's still over there, married the pediatrician who died.
Pediatrician.
Yeah. She's still over there. Well, we had about three.
Mm-hmm.
And well, the school was getting into very serious problems with accreditation. That's why I think you ought to read those accreditation reports.
Mm-hmm.
The Psychiatric Institute had by 1960 established an international reputation.
Yes.
I don't think it's generally known, but they had, State Department had 5 psychiatric facilities on their visitors list.
This was one.
This was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
1962, 63, I saw in Germany and in England and in Holland, universities, Department of Psychiatry. They listed this as one of America's outstanding psychiatric facilities, you see.
Mm-hmm.
I say this because it had its effect later on. And I'm going to jump now to 1963. I think that's the date that the school was given sort of final notice or a year to do something or be disaccredited. Disaccredited.
Going to lose their Class A.
Well, there's no Class A or B. There's only one class, either credit.
In or out.
Yeah, you're in or out.
Uh-huh.
And Cliff Hardin had said, if you lose accreditation, as the regents and the legislature to cut the school off. We just can't have it, you see.
This won't have it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
There was a committee formed to select a new dean.
Yeah.
I was on that committee. One day, Cliff Hardin said, we agreed that we should be dean, would you accept? And I said, I don't think so. Because by that time, I had set the institute up so it could pretty much run itself. It proved it when I was in Europe for 3 months.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I knew all the problems.
Mm-hmm. You had good staff.
Hmm?
You had a good staff.
I had a good staff. We were well established, well financed, and I'd held down contrast to many of the other facilities like the one at Harvard. Well, the federal budget was never over 50%, 60%. But considered and turned down. One of the things that helped me as much as anything else in the city was an important man of the city was in Washington, walking around the corridor in the Capitol, going on something, I don't know where that city. And the director of one of the institutes on that said, "Oh, Cecil, I tried to call you. They told me you're out of town. Congress has just appropriated this amount of money. I earmarked $1 million for the Bradford Psychiatric Institute." I said, "What for?" He told me at the program. I said, "No, sorry, thank you very much, but we can't accept the money." And I said it would swamp us in the wrong direction. It's not a primary concern. You're still primarily, you're doing research, but we're primarily a teaching institution. Thank you very much. I'm glad you thought of us. Big reasons. Proposed the smallest university hospital that had been built in many years, perhaps ever been built.
Mm-hmm.
Philosophical academic reasons was that I strongly believed that one, that we should train practicing physicians primarily.
Mm-hmm.
That if we did happen to train a few,
Especially.
well, no, I included specialists in the training,
Yeah.
not just.
Uh-huh.
But if we happen to have a few researchers who care less about the patients but more about research, would be fine. But that wouldn't be a primary aim as it is in one of the West Coast universities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We don't care if anybody they graduate ever practices medicine.
Yeah.
That we had to increase our specialty training as well as make general practice more attractive. But we had to. But these people that we turned out as doctors shouldn't have their training entirely in a university hospital, because that isn't real life.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, if you didn't give the university sufficient beds, they would have to use community hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
And the other reason was that I dealt with the legislature and was enough of a realist that there was no way in the world you could support the Roy, what's his name, Holly type of hospital. It was too big. You couldn't get that money. At that time, the university hospital was 83% financed, required 83% subsidy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even if you brought it down, I was thinking then, where's the 50% subsidy? There's no way you could get that kind of, expect that kind of financial support from a state the size of Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
And that furthermore, you would further irritate practicing physicians, because you would have to be strongly competitive. But that wasn't the primary reason, because I was hopeful that we could overcome this feeling. I want to get back to one of the things that caused this very serious split, the town and gown split. And this was the way that Roy Holly, who was then on the Lincoln administrative staff. My memory is that one night, at the end of a pretty long executive faculty meeting, we used to always meet at night. It was around close to 11 o'clock. Roy said, I'm going to present to you the plans for development of the campus. Just like that.
Yeah.
He had these boards with the line drawings and the elevation. Because this is the new hospital, 425 beds or whatever it was, 450 beds. He had to cross the street.
Yeah.
As far as I know, he'd never consulted anybody on this campus. Certainly not officially had gone before the board of the executive faculty. He held the things up and quickly put them back in the case. Well, I don't think there was a soul there that wasn't mad as hell. I wasn't. I was as mad as anybody on the voluntary faculty. It was ridiculous. It was just grandiose and could never have been accomplished. Well, anyway, that furthered the thing. And then they was organized. They wrote this letter, a little brochure that was called, have you seen it?
The loyal opposition?
Yeah, loyal opposition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mm. It was all understandable. I mean, I think if I had voted myself, I might have, favored more of them than I did the administration here. I agreed with them. Well, obviously we had to overcome again. So we had a starvation budget for the medical school and the nursing school, and the university hospital. We had a full-time faculty that was inadequate quantitatively and qualitatively. We had the town gown problem. We had an old-fashioned hospital with inadequate management. An out-of-date curriculum. And no real capability to improve it in many of the departments. And an accreditation problem, a serious one, kind of. If you, in some ways, I have imagined they've thrown it out now, but I had a campus plan that was quickly drawn up. And on that I had a parking garage, round one, a la the two in Chicago. And on top of that, a faculty
I remember that.
Now that was put down there. I knew, but I didn't tell anybody,
Yeah.
that if you put that parking garage, because I'd gone over and ridden it, it was a terribly inefficient plan.
Yeah.
And also, the minimum diameter would have put it from the middle of Unit 3 to the middle of the Children's Hospital. There wasn't room to put it, but I didn't. But I still feel that this campus needs a faculty-student club very badly. But that was done partly to
I think that's going all right.
apparently
It's all right.
show my feeling for unifying the faculty, both voluntary and the small thing that was done deliberately as a symbolic thing was that the steps going down the bank. That was done as a symbolic thing because remember the Clarkson Hospital had come out here on property that we had purchased, but really it never worked out.
Which one didn't do it? Huh?
Well, they were here, but they were
Yeah.
entirely separate at that time. And
Yeah.
we had skipped something else, Children's Hospital, which is a critical one.
Yes.
That was another problem was bringing Clarkson in a better relationship. And it wasn't all Clarkson's fault. It was the fault of the school and some of the people here. The Children's Hospital is an acute problem, which takes a discussion by itself.
Yeah.
The accreditation committee came and they were all of these issues up. Presented the plan, which they said, how are you going to get the money? And fortunately I had worked with a couple of the deans that were on that. So they said, well, we don't believe we can. We don't really believe we can, but we know Cecil, and we're going to give them a year to do it. Something on the way. And that's what they did.
This is what Rena Boyle said. You showed her a plan, and 6 months later you came back and showed her how much had been done, and she
Yeah.
said, the van really can do it.
Yeah. So and then the program too which was equally important in my mind, the mind of the accreditation committee, and that was developing the faculty. And they said, how are you going to overcome this town gown thing, and where are you going to get the money to bring them in? But I said, we will, and we took them my word. And in overcoming some of the faculty things, because a lot was on, they had a lot on their side. And one of the reasons I thought that we were not getting along with Clarkson was that some of the people we had in key positions here were not, well, if they were the university head of this or that department, they ought to be basically people in town. They weren't. They weren't people I'd go to personally for care in this or that area, and we didn't have many areas. So we had very little to offer Clarkson. And then the attitude of some towards Clarkson, which was the attitude of some people in Clarkson. But to overcome some of this, the other was that we did not have, at the time I became dean, when I became dean, we had no department of authority. There wasn't any. There's really no department. We had a number of total facts. We had one person in radiology who had, I don't really remember him, full-time man.
St. Albans? Yeah.
Did you know?
Yes, I remember.
He had his problems. So we had to get rid of him.
Yeah.
I had nobody.
How about pediatrics?
Pediatrics was in a terrible state. Physical facility, and we didn't have faculty. But we had, for instance, we had no neurosurgeon, and neurosurgeons wouldn't even come. They were on the faculty, but they weren't. Well, I went to Howard Hunt, who gave for radiology, gave up an extremely busy and, I would say, profitable practice at Methodist to take over. Mike Water, who I'll never forget. This is how they had been accomplished before the 6-week period before the people came. Mike Water gave up a lot to come. And very little promise. I couldn't even promise him a salary, really. And we had some strong chairman, McFadden, and very loyal, full-time. Warren Pass, had come here by then.
Musselman?
Yeah. Jim was a nice fellow.
Yeah.
And Jim had a good job at that time. But then what I did was appoint a committee to wide brush the future of the center of the medical college, its programs and policies, etc. And they included Charlie McLaughlin and Long, and I turned over to them the budget, the books, and gave them the CPA prescription to interpret anything they wanted. They could study them. We did the same thing for the executive committee of the state medical, and asked them to recommend. Well, Charlie McLaughlin and Long they saw the problems, and they were, both of them bright and broad-minded people, and they heavily supported the program. And of course, I had the inside the people. And then the State Medical Executive Committee. Some of the people like Rudy Severs,
Yeah.
or what's his name from
Dan Nye.
Dan Nye, and Upper Lincoln man. They were in strong support. And frankly, began to play some of the outstate people, some of these people against some of the little obnoxious people in town.
Yeah.
So they got sort of isolated, very much like they're trying to do with Koran right now. Huh?
Yeah.
They just got isolated by paying attention to them. Well, then we had the problem of developing, putting into translating the program into a physical facility, action.
Yeah.
And then getting financial support. As you may know, I've been on various councils in Washington. I've been on one of the construction councils, and I knew that there was going to be money during that fiscal year for new programs, physical construction programs. Unlikely to be the next year. There'd be money, but there was almost a surplus because so many of the schools had come up with plans but had been unable to get the finances, and so that money was lapsing. We had to get in on this next cycle, coming up cycle, or maybe years. We had no money. This was in May, 1st of May, winter. Morning early, I met Chancellor Cliff Harden. His office, but I didn't have an appointment when he came in. And I told him the problem. Told him that we had in mind a program that in general, the clinical facilities in general would be on this side of 42nd Street, and they go across the street for other things. And I told him the timing problem. So he said, who do you want? I said, you're a close friend of the Latenzas who've done so much work. They're personal friends of them. I said, yes. He said, they're too old. This thing will be going on for years. And he said, either Frank or John, one or the other, will be dead or retired. We just can't consider them. He said, who do you want? And I said, well, the only two firms capable at the time of growing, and they were large they are now, with HDR and Leo Daly. And I said, HDR's gotten involved somewhat in the clinical. They did the grandiose plan for Holly, so they know at least some of the problems. And let's see if we, I'd say for the hospital for them and for the basic science building, Leo Daly. So he said, all right, come on. Follow me, you drive too damn slow. And he got in his car and I got in mine, and they said, let's go to Omaha. Let's stop by and see Chuck Durham. He said, told his secretary, call Chuck, I'll be up in an hour. So we went in and said, Chuck, and we told him the problem. Chuck was them. They only done Methodist Hospital. That's the only job they done. So he said, can you pull in people from the other offices and can you do it? This is the timing. It was less than 2 months. It was a year's job. He said yes. And we went and I saw Leo Daly, can you do the basic science building? He said, I'll bring in my San Francisco office people and we'll get it done if they can get me the program. And I said, we'll have the program for you. So anyway, that's it. And so Harry McFadden and McWhorter did the basic science planning. Warren Pierce, Rich Scripner, with chairman from other departments, but they were the committee, because I appointed this committee of 5, the governing committee. You know, the principle is that if you want to, the faculty comes up with something and you want to kill it, you tell the faculty this is a very important problem, very important issue. Every department of this university should be involved. So you appoint a committee of something like 15 or 16 people. Then a year later you call the chairman in and the committee and say, where's that report? What report? So never even had a quorum for a meeting.
Yeah.
Haven't done anything. So
Yeah.
now if you want something to be slowed down, you appoint a committee of more than 7 and have it as a cross section. But if you want done, so we really had the 3 committees. One for the basic science, one for the hospital, and one for the library and the general. And put a very strong man, 2 very strong men on the hospital committee, Rich Scripner and Warren Pierce, and then McFadden and McWhorter, who did a marvelous job. And the library developers just put it up red top. And so Daly and HDR they rolled up their sleeves, and we had to get the stuff into Washington. The application by noon X day, whatever it was.
Yes.
Incidentally, during that time, I figured that, having done a lot of site visits, that if I had a application about more than 2 inches, or at least 2 inches thick, it would impress the site visitors who wouldn't read it, because they seldom read it till they get on the plane. There wouldn't be time to read it. So I had a 1,000-page application. These memorandums from various people came in to me, and I welded them together the best I could. I never saw it after I did the rough dictation. Pete Bond, who put himself through USC, did you know this? As a proofreader for Time magazine.
Oh, I didn't know that. I know he went to...
One mistake and they get another proofreader.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he proofread it and written the English on it. It was, I got it that afternoon before we leave, but they still, HDR undertook printing all of the plans. They had them printed and put it in. We had to color them for some of the requirements. Color them. So much research. Cliff he was nervous as some mother hen.
Yeah.
I remember at 5 o'clock, when you leaving? I said, we're leaving at 11 o'clock plane. When are the plans going to be ready? We had to take the 60 copies of it.
Yeah.
And I said, they promised to come in by 8 o'clock tonight. What? Well, it turned out, they rushed them down HDR to the plane, and Larry Hawthorne and I took him down. Chuck, Cliff called. You know, maybe 2 of you are going down there together. Yeah. No. Suppose the plane goes down. It was just like this was Cliff's interest, showing his interest in
Sure. Yeah.
And so anyway, we got down there, and we didn't want the 60 copies to, be put in luggage, because the luggage might get lost.
Yes.
So we took them aboard against regulations. And I told this poor little stewardess that it was a large amount of money to transfer it down to the Federal Reserve. She did. And put it right down there where I could see it.
Yeah.
And by that time the plane was ready to take off, so anyway, we got it down there and we got it in. But in order to get that, we had to show that we had the money.
Yes.
Now, this became a very critical problem. The legislature wasn't going to appropriate that amount of money in one whack.
Oh, yes, that became quite a...
So, I talked to them in Washington and had come up with a solution. If the thing was worded, and I can't give you the exact wording. So it implied that the money would be coming, the rest of it would be coming. And yet it couldn't take a chance on the Attorney General ruling it on a constitutional appropriation. So I got together with Dick Marble.
Oh.
And Dick is the one that came up with the actual wording, which Joe Sosnick approved. But I don't remember the exact wording, but it was worded very cleverly, the appropriations. So that the federal board were able to accept it
as a total package, even
Total
though they were going to
yeah,
appropriate.
yeah, because some states
Over a
could do
period.
it, you see,
Yeah.
but this state couldn't. So they just didn't bother to look into our account. But it was worded so very few people recognized, even those that voted on it. And it wasn't explained to them. And again, that's why I say Dick Marble probably wouldn't want, because that was, not the sort of thing Dick Marble does. But he enlisted the aid of Carpenter.
Yes. Very vocal
Now,
person.
this is what I wasn't going to tell you. One of our other problems was that we did not have real control down here of the budget. And it's possible, I can't say it really happened, it's possible at times when they got short of money, they did redirect some of the money, which they had a legal right to do, because it wasn't on them. This question came up in the legislature, and I was asked this budget legislative committee, and I told them that I had no proof that this was done, I couldn't swear one way or the other, and was sufficiently evasive so that Carpenter, who really is a very bright guy, he caught something in my facial expression, something, and called me out. And he said, if the budget for the medical school at M.A.L.S, would that help you? He says, I caught you evading the words that effect.
Yeah.
And he said, I will not involve you because I know that you're along. I think I can get Dick to go along with me. And so our budget became M.A.L.S.
And that was when the library budget was pulled out of the
Oh, yeah, all of it. Yeah, all of it. Yeah.
and put. And
That's
that
how
was,
it came about. But that story has never been told, and Carpenter was his best. He said, I know I can't involve you. I'm not going to ask the regents because I know what they'll say. And as far as you know, you don't know how it happened.
He just went ahead and did it.
He did it, and he got
Yeah.
Dick Marble to help him, a few others.
Yeah.
I forgot the others. Well, that made it possible for the federal government to give us this book of 15 million. And incidentally, there have been several articles, and they apparently have gotten confused on the business office and when some of these buildings were up and so forth.
Oh.
This article that came out that the previous chancellor had nothing to do with was all wrong. And what they did there, that is quite incorrect. Some of the buildings, they said, that came up during that time, what's his name, Sparks' time, were already dedicated. Now, what the business office did in getting dates, the date that the final payment was made, and sometimes it's years afterwards when an argument over whether that change order should have been paid by the contractor. But Rich Scripsner had to make a report to NIH, a post-construction assessment.
Yes.
And if you look in that, you will find, and if you could Xerox this, these are it doesn't include the, everything. It doesn't include the Epi Science Center. Now, but I haven't got a copy of that. But you probably need, you ought to have
Yes, I can get a.
Huh?
I can get a copy
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Well, now this was taken from in here. You can have this. I don't have a copy of this. But I just thought those things
Yeah.
ought to be straightened out. Now, we did manage to get up the budget. We managed to get enough people that we could begin to get in some requests and get in some grants. So the budget increased. One of the things that isn't known is how I happened to be president, go from dean to president.
Well, let's hear your
Do
story
you know
on
that?
that. I have an impression, but I don't know whether
What is
it's
your impression?
right. Well, this happened at about the time that UNO,
Yeah. Well,
the University of Omaha, became UNO.
yes, exactly.
And they agreed, or the university agreed that they would keep a president at UNO.
You know,
So,
the meeting occurred in my conference room,
yeah.
and Cliff Harden and Joe Sosnick, University of Omaha's Board of Regents at that time, he called and asked Cliff to come over to see him along with some of the other regents from University of Omaha. And they were in deep and increasing financial trouble. Joe Sosnick and I cooled our heels for almost 2 hours. We didn't know what was up. We speculated that this might be, but we knew that University of Omaha University was in trouble. These people left, and during that meeting, Cliff agreed that he used his influence too. He had more influence than subsequent chancellors have had. Yeah. And so he discussed it briefly with Joe and I, and he said, well, yes, they'll become a campus, so they'll have to be a separate campus. And Lincoln, Omaha will have to have a separate campus. And I said, wait a minute now, you don't mean that medical center will be part of the West Dodge High?
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And I used the word West Dodge High. I said, no matter what we were able to do here, that your mother institution has a lot to do with your accreditation, for example.
Sure.
And I said, no way could this be part of it. And Joe agreed, and Cliff thought a few minutes, and said, all right, but they're going to have a president. I said, well, whoever heads this campus has got to be a president too. Got to have the same title as the person head of it. Otherwise, they won't be equal. They got to be on equal basis to the other two campuses. Separate campus on equal basis. And right then and there it was settled very much because he was able to carry the lead.
Sure.
That's how it occurred. So then I became president and dean.
Andy, yes.
And the reason why I stayed dean for 2 years, well, any money I got, I wanted to put it into new faculty or new programs of some sort. And Mrs. Clausen was a very, very capable person. And what's his name? The reporter, Pete Bond. And that permitted me to stay in contact with people anyway. The more assistance you have, the further away you get from the people doing the work. That's how it came about. And,
I didn't know the details, but
that was the details of it.
Yeah.
And another thing that might, at that time, we haven't touched about was the Children's Hospital.
Yes, I was going to ask you if you
The
would.
Department of Pediatrics was weak. The Department of Pediatrics had facilities that should have been shut down by the fire marshal and the health department. Children's Hospital came on this campus with the idea that it would be the pediatric teaching arm of the medical school. They were given a 100-year lease to the hospital. There was a very carefully drawn contract between the Board of Regents and the board of directors of Children's Hospital, which stated explicitly, and Creighton had no rights there. But over the period of time, it become shared with Creighton.
Can you tell us why it became necessary or why it was expedient to share it with Creighton?
It is crept in.
And some pressure from the local people?
Yeah. I don't know if it just crept in. Primarily it was I think the School Hill was at fault. Not even.
Yeah.
Well, in the files, I summarized this whole thing again to be a bit of Cliff was very helpful in it, and we had it almost settled. I held back final plans in the hospital, excluding pediatrics to the last possible moment, because we hoped that would be. Children's Hospital was running a deficit of about $345,000 in my memory a year. Running a deficit, yearly deficit. Cliff and I made an offer to the Children's Hospital that we'd close down pediatrics, the University Hospital, take the money that they'd been doing there and give that to them. And couldn't give the state money, but we would pay them as it were for the use of the teaching desk, the amount of that deficit, which was the amount of the pediatric budget. And there would be developed contract, additional contract, to implement the existing one, whereby Children's Hospital would maintain clinical control, or the operation would maintain the operation of the hospital, but the university would maintain the academic programs. The then president of Children's Hospital, a new man came in, he was with the head of the life insurance division of Mutual Omaha. I forgot his name. And he agreed. And so it twisted the arm of their attorney. He had a coronary and died. We couldn't even get the first base from Walker came. And a small group of pediatricians, the vocal influenza group, but not even the majority in numbers. So we had to go ahead, and the first thing we did was we needed pediatrics so much that they did everything else. The accreditation group would not have accredited us. They had done something about pediatrics quickly, you see. So that's why pediatrics is in Unit 3 and not in the new construction, because it had to be underway.
Yes.
And
we remodeled the area above the library.
Yeah, we remodeled that area for pediatrics. That's the reason it's there. Because we waited and waited to try to get some sort of agreement. We didn't give up, by the way, the Children's after that. A couple of times almost had an agreement. And R.B. Saxon planned the steam tunnels, and also there could be a pedestrian tunnel.
Pedestrian, I remember that.
Yeah. But maybe you ought to get that letter memorandum I sent to the hospital, because that whole thing is summarized in that memorandum. I do have a copy of that somewhere, because I made a copy of it and sent it to Vancouver. Now, other developments, it's about this time, the Psychiatric Institute had gotten to the point where it could start taking on research, but didn't have any real research space. The building had been designed except a wing for research. So I got an anonymous gift, 2 floors of that research center. And then had John Franklin Tender design the 3rd floor, which was to be for handicapped children. when we're retarded and other handicapped children. Incidentally, this is the first university medical school to have its own facilities for mentally retarded.
There were some people who advised you to stay away from this mental retardation program.
Yeah, at that time, I went to a very prestigious and fairly affluent foundation in New York. I vaguely knew the executive director, who had been in the Navy, and he let me talk to his whole staff and a couple of the trustees. And I outlined what we wanted to do. And they went to the executive session, called me in, and offered me a large sum of money for general research, but nothing for retardation. I got so mad, I was quixotic and turned down the money. And stormed out. Never spoke to the guy after that. Meeting wouldn't even speak to him out of it. So I went on, I had an appointment the next day with two institutes. The Institute of Mental Health and the Institute of Neurology. And Bethesda. And having been on various of their committees, they assembled their chief people and gave me 2 hours to present a book, which I did. And that was, then broke up for lunch. One of the directors could have lunch with me. He said, Cecil, we can't really meet it, except we did spend 2 hours of our time telling us about this. You're not trying to bring retarded into that new institute. You'll run it. He later waved the flag for retardation when the candidate came.
Yeah.
I got no money for it, but Cliff continued to support me. Well, anyway, I forgot that tell Cliff or the Board of Regents about that third floor. Had the plans. Gretchen Swanson Pullen, had been down to the Institute. I took her in the turn for the She was all. But her brothers were never in town together. Finally one day, in the morning, I got a call from Willie Gretchen, their secretary. And both of them were down there. We'll be in for about an hour and a half from one of my way. So the first time I ever drove 60 miles an hour in Dodge Street, because the Regents were meeting up in the front of the old Unit 1. You know that conference room on top?
Oh, yes, yeah.
They were in session. And then I remembered I hadn't told the Regents anything about it. You know. So I went down and met with them, and they called Gretchen. And they said, okay, have the money, what are you going to call it? And I said, obviously the Swanson Pavilion. I said, that's what they wanted. So they said, all right, you can have it. And so I came back and called Cliff out of the meeting and told him. So they had about 5 resolutions passed, approving my seeking the money, approving accepting the money, approving hiring an architect, approving the plans. So I showed them the plans.
After it was all done.
Yeah. So that's how that came about. But then the next thing, my own clinical interest had shifted about 1955, 1956 from schizophrenia, from mental to handicapped children. 2 reasons. One, I had seen how little was being done. The other was that psychiatric diagnoses had become so inadequate. It was during that decade, it was popular to say that the diagnoses don't count. I shifted my own interest, and another development that occurred on the campus was the 3 children's facilities, Maya, Monroe, and Lloyd. That's a story in itself, you know, how it came about. You know how we got to
I don't know.
Do you know the story? You ought to know the story on that. Again, the key person in that was Lowell Dunn.
Yeah.
Among other people,
Yeah.
Al Gordon,
Yes. Yes.
who also is responsible for that addition for my getting the addition to the Psych Institute. Now, the way that came about had a little bit of I needed this research, so I went to the World Herald. I don't remember whether it was Pete Bone or Horace Newbury. And I said, how about chumming the water for me? You know what I mean? You chum when
Yes.
for fishing,
When you're
blue fish,
fishing.
and you throw
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
minnows out of it, not. And they said, what? And I said, well, could you run a series of 7 consecutive stories on psychiatric research? And research and then psychiatric research, explaining what is needed to be done, what is being done, what the potentialities are. And they said, well, tell me a little about it, and I did. And they said, sure, that makes it good for you. So they turned the water from me. I sat back in about the middle of the next week after the last article. Al Gordon called me. Said, you going to be in Saturday? And I said, yeah. So he came down and he says, tell me more about research, medical research in general and psychiatry. And so for 3 hours we discussed it. Next Tuesday he called me and he said, a couple of people want to meet with us, but I've got some prospective donors for you, but it has to be anonymous. Said, can you meet with them and in a half an hour tell me what we discussed over the 3 hours? Because I've told them, but they want to hear it from you. And so they made this anonymous gift, these 3 men. And then Miss Swanson's made the other 4. That's how it came about. But Al Gordon played a tremendous part in things. Now on the Maya, we got to the Maya, you see, Lord was already in existence.
Yes.
You remember Lord was founded
over at Field Club School originally.
Originally, no, it moved to Florence.
Well, I don't remember that.
Not Lord, no, I mean Monroe.
How do you mean?
Monroe.
Monroe.
Monroe,
Benson.
I meant Monroe.
Yeah.
And,
Benson.
It was a small operation over the Field Club.
Yeah.
Well, we got a publicity program going and had a radiothon for Mike. And we had that fellow that was the detective talking with me for us and way back then, popular line, on a radio program. Well, anyway.
Well.
I'll never forget about 1 o'clock in the morning, this stenographer came in and said she wanted to make a contribution to cerebral palsy. That's what it was for. And she said, my mother, who was 68 years old, is just about. Different kind of palsy. We took the money. Well, I had that plus a little bit of other money. And we had a promise from Hill Burton if we could get the matching money. But we were about 300 and some odd thousand, I've forgotten, short. Al Gordon and Frank Latenza had approached Mrs. Maya Singh. But she hadn't made up mind. We didn't know that we had to know that next day. So Al volunteered to go over and see Ms. Maya. So we went over to Chicago, saw him. We got this thing postponed last thing on the agenda. And just as about 10 minutes, this is where the medic left. Al Gordon walks in with Ms. Maya. And he said, this is Ms. Louis Maya. I think she has something to say. He said, I understand. I don't know the exact figure, but you're $350,000 short. He said, you know, my husband got his start in fitting with that place right now. He has a mile manager show.
Isn't that great?
But we had about 10 minutes left. So that's how that came about. Well, those 3 units didn't work out for a number of reasons quite as we anticipated, particularly Monroe and Maya, which was in. We had almost no staff or faculty. We had a budget of less than $80,000 a year. A good bit of it coming from my family operating budget and the insignificant budget. I was research and training director with myself.
Yeah.
So I remember the Board of Regents meeting, I've been in the Board of Directors meeting. Why aren't we doing very well? We don't have staff. We don't have a budget. What kind of budget do you need to produce $500,000? Well, anyway, the university took it over. They just gave it to the university. During the bankruptcy. So also, if they stop operating, we gain our property anyway.
Yeah.
But I decided to continue to have a lay board, which still has to this day.
We still have it.
Yeah, we still have it.
Mm-hmm.
And then thought, well, the only way we can make a success is to bring in the best possible person in the United States. And the person I thought was Paul Hetzner.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, Bob Kugel, he knew Paul. So we got Paul to leave. He was special assistant to the Surgeon General and the President of Lawrence University of California Conference. So Paul came out, and I'm pretty sure he has developed over there.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best programs of its kind in the United States. One of the most complete and highest quality programs. Has a budget of close to $3 million.
Isn't that something?
But very little of it from this university.
Uh-huh.
So, but from a variety of sources.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But a very excellent program. We're on all over the country. Known about it, of course, outside of the
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing was Eplet.
Yes.
I wasn't avoiding Eplet anymore. Eplet, again, a number of people gave that idea to Cliff. Eplet people gave the money. And they gave the money for the building, plus an operating budget that started low, peaked, and then came down. One of the commands I had when I became dean was to do something about Eplet. Henry Lemon was a fine fellow. But was no manager. And not a basic science researcher. And the money was already given. The only money he had was from the Eplet thing that was to go 10 years or whatever it was to come down and around. So I had to find somebody. So I passed word around the country. And I served on a U.S. Senate committee with two of the primary cancer researchers in the United States. And so they called me about the same time I got a couple of other calls about Phil Chibby. I'd heard of Phil Chibby, but didn't know him personally. I knew the medical school over there was in Puffin. And the only decent building they had was the one that Phil was in. They had to get a building, they had no money. Well, anyway, I contacted Phil. He'd already been contacted by others. And he never told me that I heard the M.A.L.S. Foundation. I knew they were recruiting. And they are very, very paternalistic up there. I don't really know that. Beyond the faculty up there, you are told we don't bother look for a house, we have a house for you.
They tell you when to go on vacation and where to go.
Where every time, on Wednesday evenings you have dinner here, on Fridays you're here, so forth. It's very paternalistic. And they give you, take care of your family's needs. They're very generous in their health care and
Annuities and things.
all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
If you're a senior member, each December 20th or something, they split the pot so that they can remain non-profit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to do that, you know, so they have no profit at the end of the year. They split that up among the senior members.
Well, I had heard something to the effect from the librarian up there.
So I went over to see Phil because I wanted to see his place. Saw his operation, met some of his people, and saw the kind of equipment he had. Had him come over here and took a completely non-paternalistic attitude of recruiting, and he asked me about housing here. I'm not real estate, they didn't have the slightest damn idea. Went through the agony of buying a house, and 2 houses in Omaha, satisfied out of real estate person. He has some real estate companies in contact.
Yeah.
And on down the line,
Yeah.
what sort of programs do you have with family? With family there, like I said. And then, well, this is what his physical needs were. He needed this additional building. So he came back, brought some of his key people over, and brought his wife over. And he's back over and saying, well, what about this building? Other places out there, so many square feet. So I told Peter Keeler about it, and 2 other people who I had served over the years without asking them anything. I got with himself. I've been there, so professional advisor, medical programs, and so forth. But Peter's board of directors were meeting, and I called him to a ship he was in town. Could he have lunch with me in Omaha Club? Then if he didn't leave his board of directors meeting, come down, he asked the kind of questions that only Peter Keeler could ask.
Yeah.
Boy, they were sharp up their time with that. But anyway, they agreed to give $2 million to us. And you know the problem with that anyway.
Something about the steel. You had to buy the steel.
No, this is long before they had this phase construction. We hadn't gotten the whole thing financed just about that time. I decided something had to be done about the North Building.
Yeah.
And then we really needed something to continue education. Well, I talked to people in Washington, and we used that money to plus money as matching money to do the North Building. And they said, well, let's talk to our lawyers. They finally said, yes, you can, call me. But in the meantime, we run into this steel shortage, and the escalation of costs, construction costs. Also, Phil and his staff are getting arrested.
Yeah.
Where's my building?
Yeah.
But I saw the steel going up. And the Kansas seniors that went out, and the donor, one of the donors had demanded that the Kansas firm, even though it was out, do it. Didn't give the university any choice to do it. And never had their own engineering. They were way behind on the engineering aspect. Well, I talked to Ness, and I talked to George Miller. And the only place it could go, and we had to go Ness, where it is. Although by that time we had found a default came across the corner there. Did you know the default runs across?
Yeah.
So Phil was getting quite restive, and I knew some other people were after him. And he brought over some 25 people, and $1 million or so in equipment. And so we told George, go ahead and dig, get us an excavator, the hole.
Yeah.
So that became, and that sat there for over a year.
Oh, yeah.
2 years.
Yeah.
One of the Epley men put up a sign one day, the Epley Hole of Science.
Yes.
And then they got word that and we did too, that there was going to, all the water, thought that the water was going to affect the foundations of the existing Epley building. So there were cracks there that we put plaster Paris over. So but anyway, we got the other money. Hey, but in the meantime, the price of steel was going up. And I knew I couldn't get any more money. So I said to George, what about buying the steel now? Their engineer from Kansas City who did this frame has already finished it. We know what the frame is. We can order it. Yeah, the working drawings are done even on that. So we ordered the steel. I signed for it. Didn't go through. Well, the Kansas City little steel company down there fabricated the steel. A year went by. The steel was sitting down. I had no money to pay them because I read the fine print was that the Apple people wanted to pay us as they were certified the work had been done, and they wouldn't consider that as work done. So that was caught with close to $500,000 of steel. About that time, that was just before, what's the name became as president, before Roskinson, Woody.
Woody Barnum.
Yeah. And Jess was the first thing I told Woody was my problem. And he almost had a fit. And he'd call me every other day about it. And I said, oh. Well, at that time, there was a shortage of money. You remember?
Yeah.
And smaller operators couldn't get any money. The banks didn't have it to loan.
That's right. Yeah.
So I found out that, furthermore, this little steel manufacturer and fabricator in Kansas City couldn't get any further credit because he depended on bank loans. He couldn't get a bank loan.
And he'd done this work and hadn't been paid
And
for
hadn't
it.
been paid for it.
Yeah.
So through a friend in banking here, had a friend in Kansas City in a big bank,
Yeah.
told him about the we sat down. Cunningham said, and this is you know the way politics go. Cunningham said, you've got another little matter held up, you know. Held up by the majority. He said, okay, why not release this? It's a drop in the bucket. It's very needed. And he said, I can guarantee you that I can assure you the support my side of the aisle. Whatever this other thing was, they didn't even mention what it was. And so it came out of committee and went on the floor and voted. Well, it then was held up by the Bureau of the Budget.
Yeah.
Who could see no point in it, and the Association of American Medical Colleges wouldn't support it. You know, there were too few schools involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then you couldn't get to the president. You know, it was too little a matter.
Yeah.
So I ran into one of the White House people I knew and told him about it. I said, you get a chance, talk to the chief of staff and see if you can't ask the president just to tell the Bureau of the Budget to go on release it.
Was that Larry Myers?
Yeah,
Larry O'Brien? On the White House staff?
I believe it was. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Then, as a coincidence, I told Cliff Harden fully informed about it. You know, and this is a story not from Cliff, but one of his people at the Orange Bowl. One of the White House people came up and wanted some tickets to get down there. Just happened to be there. And word got to Cliff, and Cliff said, yeah, I got 2 tickets. Let me talk to the young man. He told him about the lottery. Shortly thereafter, the money was released.
How about that?
So you got to support the football team.
Yeah. Oh, I'm down there every time.
Well, this is the story I heard. I got to ask Cliff about it sometime. It may have been somebody on the staff. May have been sounds more like Beauty. The kind of thing Beauty could have done, Jim. Although Cliff was capable of it, it sounded more like Gene Beauty.
Well, when the appropriation or when the funds were finally released, Wayne State was the first one to be funded. We were the second. It was only 24 hours.
Didn't we get the largest one?
We had the first application in.
Yeah.
But they announced for Wayne State first in it. The librarian told me that you were the one that shook the money loose. We were all sitting around here with our plans and everything and waiting for the funds. And that because Nebraska was instrumental in getting this ball rolling, made the first grant to Wayne State and the second one to
Mhm.
Nebraska,
Yeah,
and then, so it went like,
You see, there was another person I saw. Oh, the other person I went to. See, I'd been on the Senate Appropriations Committee as a consultant.
as a consultant, I have.
So I saw this gal, the secretary of the meeting, and asked her to talk to a couple of senators. So it's better that come from her. Her name is Margaret something. She's still down the road.
Was she
She was just
originally
secretary.
from Omaha?
No, 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 no. She was
Oh.
Eastman
Yeah.
from Boston. She's just secretary to the subcommittee.
Oh.
But that was,
Yeah.
she had the
This
airs
is
of
important.
that.
Yeah.
Well, they have the air about a attractive young woman to me. I'm about 60 now. But anyway, that and I don't think I even saw Roman on it because it was held up in a House committee.
Yeah.
But old Cunningham, and he helped on some other things.
Well, of
I
course,
found him.
we were struggling with the regional library too at that time,
Yeah.
and I said, well, we couldn't handle the regional library unless we had the new building.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, you're going to get the new building, but they wouldn't say when.
Yeah, no, it was just being held up, and
Yeah.
all that was fun.
It wasn't it, though?
But at the same time, we had to remember developing faculty,
Yeah.
and recruiting wasn't easy. That's why.
Well, recruiting for the library was just practically nil because of the physical facilities.
But even after we got the thing
Yeah.
on the plan, but even there, was to get them out here, and I knew part of the recruiting effort was that most of them said, if I had somebody from New York, you consider a job here, they say, where's them?
Yeah.
So I'd invite them out as visiting lecturers, and many of them came, and it was a good procedure because we didn't offer it for some of them. There was nothing they said to them. They just didn't.
It-
Chemistry or what else wasn't there. And, but this is what we did, and also I found that the opinion of the faculty wives, and whether you should offer it to them, was probably the most valid criteria. They couldn't tell you why. Because we have not socially. And you ask Lottie and others, what about so-and-so? Oh, come on, you wouldn't really consider that.
Yeah.
What's wrong? I don't know. And they were usually right, or else they'll,
Yeah.
no, he's out here for a free trip.
Just a free trip.
Trip,
Yeah.
evening.
Yeah.
And I found out M.A.L.S does the same thing. Howard Rome told me he always goes around next morning to call somebody to consider and ask the wives what do you think of something.
Well, I always said that in the Army, the fellows looked pretty much alike because they were in the uniform, but if you could see their wives, you got an idea of what kind of background they had.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I'd have a whole list here. What do we have here?
my gosh. So we're talking.
This has been a...
Excuse me, it's past my,
uh,
I passed it to one of them by 2 hours.
well, we shouldn't do that.
No.
This has been a most interesting conversation, and I'm sure that all the scholars who come after us and want to know how this campus developed will find the information that we'll have stored here in the library of great importance to any
We haven't
study
touched
like
on
that.
some things deliberately. For instance,
Well,
they had never found out Lincoln had acquired the property across the street.
maybe we should schedule another session.
That's all done legally. I cleared it every
Oh,
point.
I'm sure it was done legally, but I
But
can...
it was done without, most of it acquired without prior knowledge of the region.
Well, and I understand that you ran into some difficulty when you started some of the construction here by not um, taking out building permits for the city.
Matter of fact, I didn't even know that.
Oh, well,
I knew there was a problem on the height of the building.
Yeah.
We had to clear that, but I didn't know. Well, I didn't know that.
Well, the city inspection department said, "Here,
Oh,
here,
wait.
you are building buildings out there, and there's no local permits."
Oh, yeah, I know
Lincoln
that.
said,
Yeah, we don't need it.
"We don't need it."
Yeah,
And,
no, that was just a routine.
yeah.
You got into all of it. But I
Finally-
really didn't know, pay much attention to that.
No.
We didn't have to have a permit from the city.
Well, apparently, legally, you didn't have to. I understand that later the college would take out a permit but wouldn't pay the fee that would be involved. So,
One thing that the city promised me is just solved this past year. The sewer, some going down on what's the name street?
Dewey Street.
Dewey Street,
Yeah.
need to be enlarged.
Yes.
Way back there, 12 years ago, but they never got the money to do it.
Yeah. Just.
Yeah, we blocked the extending Dewey down to
Down to the psych unit.
no, down all the way down to what's the street?
Farnham?
No,
You mean you want?
Dewey down straight west.
Oh, to 44th Street. You mean?
No, not the 44th, but all the way west to what's the street where the creek used to run?
Oh, South Creek.
Saddle Creek,
Yeah.
which meant they had to take a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
property to go extend it so they could go off on an angle.
Uh-huh.
I heard about it one morning.
Yeah.
You ever heard that story?
No.
And it was coming up the next day, council meeting. So I got hold of Frank Hetzner about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Frank, we got blocked this thing because we're sitting in the house.
Yeah.
And so we sat down, I don't know who suggested, but anyway, we decided the only way to block it was to come out the next morning edition of the World Herald showing this new building, which was, I forgot what we called it, but we didn't know what it was. So Frank, I did, and Drew and I, Frank was an artist as well as not all architects are artists, he was an artist. He knew this elevation. Got it over the World Herald, and they printed this story of the new building. It showed the quotations, which was right on the end of
I'm doing.
Dewey.
Yeah.
And so the thing didn't fly in the council. And of course there's no building at all, but it was just this elevation. I don't remember what they call it. They probably called it children's research or something they saw.
Yeah.
They wouldn't dare go against it.
Uh-huh.
Oh, Frank was a great fellow.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the people have suggested that I should talk to Nestle Tenser, that he might have some information.
Reba Bamscutter, one of the reasons for the recognition of the Nebraska Psychiatric Institute. The Institute was the first hospital of any kind to have internal television.
Yes.
The term telecommunications was coined in the use of television by the Institute became very well known throughout the country. And the Psych Institute, Reba Bamscutter, and pioneers of medical use of television and other long-distance communications, of telecommunications. And Reba is very well known still throughout the country.
Yes.
And did a remarkable job. Two-way television, for instance, was developed here. But Reba contributed tremendously to the programs there, and I think it's a program for the campus.
She still is.
Yeah.
With her training program.
You mentioned Lowell Dunn. I'd like to mention it again, and there's another key thing that did not get discussed that I would like to discuss. But Lowell Dunn was a very unique fellow, very capable guy. Probably should have been in research all his life. And here he had the finance. Without any grant, Lowell Dunn developed the first telephone transmission of electrocardiography, electrocardiographs.
Yeah.
And I personally can vouch for it because Kansas was working on other places and they had grants. Lowell didn't. A lot of it was done in his basement. But one night, through some foreman down in Northwestern Bell, we got in touch with the foreman in New York Bell. And while we were sure that it would go from here to New York, we hadn't tried it, didn't have the money to try it. Because we had sent it over the old Walnut Exchange, and anything that go over the Walnut Exchange could go anywhere in the United States. So it was so poor before they remodeled.
Yeah.
So one night about after midnight, I think it was about 2 o'clock this time, 1 o'clock New York time, we transmitted from here to New York and back. And that was really the first transmission of EKG, a long-distance transmission.
Well, I thought about that because I've been asked to be on an advisory board for a library of what they're calling medical martyrs. These are people who did not become recognized for the contribution they have made. I haven't made up my mind whether I'll accept this appointment because I don't know too much about this group. In Wichita, Kansas, it is. I can't tell you the name of it.
Well, the other thing that I don't know how we didn't get into because it's very important in the development of this campus and the school. This is the program for general practitioners, now family medicine.
Yeah.
This is the first school to have a full-time professor of general practice and practice. This is the most remarkable guy who dedicated one of the biggest factors in the development of this school is Fay Smith. And frankly, one of my gripes is that I have not been able to get the school to do anything in recognition of Fay Smith. And they're making a mistake because there's a lot of support still flying upstate.
I'm sure
Now, Fay Smith, you know, was an unusual chap. He lived in a small town in the very western part of the state. He dressed as if he bought his clothes from Brooks, but he didn't. But anyway, he made a nice appearance.
Yes.
Personable.
Everybody liked
the head
him.
of the Masons.
Yeah.
President of the state medical. And Fay gave up a very nice life and a very profitable practice to come here. How was Fay recruited? He was recruited primarily between halves at football games. Because I'd seen him at Lincoln, and I would lead him every time I saw him about coming here and starting the program in general practice. Finally, he said, well, I'll talk to you sometime in Omaha. Finally, one Saturday morning, he called and said, I'm in town. I'll be through at 11 o'clock, and your wife coming out and have lunch. But they ended up having lunch and dinner. And over an empty bottle of scotch about 11 o'clock at night, he accepted the position.
He was a great guy.
And I made it contingent upon him attending the next meeting of the World Association of General Practitioners, professors of general practice.
Yeah. In England.
Well, then I told him after he got here, he had 2 colleagues in the world. One in Scotland, the University of Edinburgh, and one in Ankara, Turkey, in the medical school. But the man from Ankara wouldn't be able to make it, but I wanted him to attend the meeting in Edinburgh. Isn't
that great?
But that was, well, Fay, I then was under some pressure to put him in medicine. Some people thought he ought to be in this and that department. But I made the decision that he shouldn't be in any department, because then he would be shelved. But attached him to the dean's office, which was one of the luckiest things I ever did. One of the things that held down this school was the attitude of all the private insurance companies. It wasn't just this school, but they would not pay the insurance premium for patients who came into university hospitals.
What was their justification for that?
Well, they were getting by with it. And finally, there was a big suit against the Midwestern Health Insurance Company
Yeah.
by one of the California universities in Los Angeles, and also by a patient who had paid his premiums for years. And the courts gave him the amount, the school amount that they covered, but also, what do the attorneys call it, for, the state doesn't have it, but for harm done in a general way. There's a word for it. But anyway, a big verdict, yeah.
Yeah.
But we still couldn't get Mutual of Omaha, Physicians Mutual.
Yeah. Run by
Wouldn't they?
doctors.
Huh? Run by doctors,
Run
yeah.
by doctors, yeah.
So, finally, I met with the chairman of the board, and Blue Cross Blue Shield with me.
Huh.
Fay was a trustee of
Yeah.
Blue Cross Blue Shield. He twisted their arms in many meetings,
Yeah.
But anyway, they started. So then I went to Mutual, and about that time, that California suit, they didn't tell them anything about it. I knew, but I knew it was on their mind. And decided not to threaten them, but said I knew they were heavily supporting Creighton, which was fine.
Yeah.
But make a long story short, it was primarily Fay who swung that around with Rich Scripner, giving him the figures and everything. And Rich was another valuable contributor to the whole development here. We have never gotten that grant ready without Rich, but other things. But that was a very difficult thing to turn around. And
Yes.
finally turning the image, which hadn't been completely done yet, to the school. But when we took over, Rich and himself, it was 82 or 83% subsidized, the hospital.
Yeah.
On the left, it was 80% self-supported. And that 20%, by the way, I don't know what it is now, but Rich analyzed this for me. And at that time, a good 3/4 of that 20%, or 60% of that 20%, went subsidy of the average Nebraskan who came here. The average Nebraskan at that time being somebody with about a $7,200 yearly income, family of 4,
Yeah.
and we subsidized them by not charging them full amount and not making them pay, giving them 3 years to pay. And that took good 60% of the subsidy. Then there's X% for any business you have, and that is people that's going to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Then there was straight subsidy of certain programs related to medical education. Now, one of the things that when we had that 83% that started, there was no Medicaid, Medicare, Medicare. But we were running into problems of getting Medicaid repayment too. And that was handled by Fay and prescription.
Inscription.
But then Fay was so well accepted by the faculty
Yeah.
and held his own pretty well in rounds.
Uh-huh.
They couldn't say that ignorant general practitioner. But he was he was a good doctor.
Oh, yes. His
but-
patients
yeah.
all
And
just...
but he got accepted, so then we had a department, which was the first department. So, Fay, the day he died, I was called up to Lincoln. I had a 4 o'clock lecture. I asked Fay to take it, but he was capable of taking lectures. And what this had to do with it, I don't know. But he was unusually tense, and there's no reason to mean he'd done it before. That evening he went home and told his wife he had a headache and thought he'd take a walk. That was unusual because of all things that Fay was, he wasn't an athlete.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he had a stroke that night. But I don't know whether, but I always wondered, if I hadn't asked him to take that lecture. But he was, no, I mean,
Yeah.
but he was concerned about a stroke, whether his wife knew it or not, because three members of his family at age, whatever it was, 50 or 55, had had strokes. And when he passed that birthday, he came in and said, oh, let's go out and get a drink to celebrate our past.
You made it that far. Huh?
But Faye is somebody forgotten, and the last thing I want to do around here is get some recognition for Faye.
Yeah.
And I brought it up to Rigby,
Yeah.
and they said, no, there are too many people that they have to give it to. But, and I wrote a long letter explaining the part he played, the other things Faye did. Faye helped heal this breach between, he sealed the relationship with outstate and helped breach it here in town.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is something, picture, bronze.
Well, why don't we ask Dr. McGriffin to work on it? Particularly if you want it in the library.
Well, in the library or in the
Or in the family practice
family
area.
practice.
Area.
You know, the sort of thing we have the profile on relief on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think something ought to be done, and we can get some support from Rudy and from Severs and from
Yeah.
Dan
Dan and I.
and others outstate.
There ought
But
to be a lot of
this
people
is
that-
historically important because he is the one that,
that started that whole
they
family
put it across.
practice thing.
Well, was I criticized by my colleagues around the country when I appointed him professor?
Well, I suppose so.
Yeah.
There's another person that we haven't mentioned, is that's Mary Jo Hand.
Mary Jo Hand, And another person who hasn't been mentioned who quietly played a very important part in certainly in the national world recognition of this place. And I still think he's one of the brightest people here on campus we know. There's Bob Ellingson.
Yes.
Now, in Europe, and I made this fine country tour, I found it spontaneous to go on a medical campus. They say, oh, you're from Omaha, do you know Bob Ellingson?
Yeah.
And I suspect nationally he's one of the most respected people, along with Phil Shibby, that we have here.
He certainly did function very well on the RML Advisory Committee.
On the what?
The Regional Library Committee, you know.
Well, Bob's a very bright fellow, very
Yeah.
sound fellow, very steady and honest, and entirely intellectually honest, and does have this international reputation.
I knew that because he I think is still active as an editor of
Several
journals. Yeah.
And president of several organizations. But, I know in Washington still he's extremely well thought of. One other thing about the Institute, did you know that the Institute, the program for the Institute was developed back in 1951.
Yeah.
It is the first building designed for community psychiatry. In fact, only major building ever been designed for it. And all elements of what is now community psychiatry were included in the design of that building. So that when NIH went to Congress with the idea of community mental health centers, trying to explain what was meant by it, they used the Psychiatric Institute building still as
an
example, one of the 10 examples of modern psychiatric buildings. And it is in the APA book on psychiatric architecture.
Good.
But it was the first, that program was approximately 12, 15 years ahead of the national program. And the program of training general practitioners in psychiatry was the first program and anticipated the national program by almost a decade. And we used alcohol. Do you know why? how are you going to validate a program, effective a program?
Yeah.
Well, if you chained him in alcohol, the guy was either on the wagon or off the wagon. You had
Yes.
very objective evidence of this to say.
Yeah.
But one of the funny things that happened was we forgot in the initial curriculum to include anything on one of the most common conditions that's caused mostly by alcohol, but other things, that comes into a general hospital. And that's delirium tremens. Didn't have it in at all.
Didn't have it in there at all?
No. That was like when I was taking my board in neurology.
Yeah.
The guy asked me basic neurology, causes of convulsion. For about 10 minutes I listed causes, and he said, haven't you left out one? And I said, I don't know whether I have, I don't know of it. So how about epilepsy?
So common, you just skipped right over it. I mean,
But,
so,
and a name connected to that is Thaddeus Crush.
yes.
And the first person full-time for research direction was Jackson Smith, his character.
Yeah, I thought about him too.
He's a character.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, he was a delight to know.
Talk about recruiting. And Thaddeus, if people are asking, why'd you leave Harvard, why'd you leave Boston to come to Omaha? He said, well, I rode up to Lincoln, Cecil, and Jackson Smith. I was sitting in the back, and I couldn't understand what they were saying. They mumbled so. But I came out to Omaha to find out what they were talking about.
What they were talking about, huh? Well, didn't Jackson Smith have, where did he come from? Great
They came
fun
here
to
from
know.
Baylor.
Yeah.
So you'd rally Oklahoma and Texas. And the other thing, Bob Ellingson was the first person I recruited. Before he even came out here, recruited.
He came from Chicago, didn't he?
From Evanston,
Evanston.
Northwestern. Well, he's probably been on the faculty right now longer than anybody who's on the full-time actual faculty. Than anybody else that long now.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that.
I can't think of anybody, unless he grew up here, like,
No, I'm talking about full-time faculty. Wait a minute.
like McFadden.
McFadden, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, McFadden.
Uh-huh.
But he's almost as long as McFadden.
Yes, just about, because I can remember when Ellingson came, and I can remember when McFadden was still in his residency. That means I've been here longer
I'm
than
trying
I
to
worked
get now.
at.
Since I didn't trust my memory, I tried to get, bring together a little data. I didn't have time. But I had the dates. But I had to take time to find out when some of these people came.
Well, I can always find out that.
Yeah, I called all the institute. I had trouble. Jackson Smith came in 1955. It's about the time we opened the institute.
Yes.
And left in 59. Delbert Messner.
Oh, yeah.
You remember Delbert?
Yes. I used to run into him once in a while. Messner, wasn't it?
Messner.
At the American Hospital Association.
Yeah, he's works for American Hospital
Yes.
Association. I haven't seen him hear from him lately. Delbert was a great help.
Yes.
Carl Martin, too, in getting the institute going. See, I stole him from Mayo, and then Mayo, after he was here 4 years, stole him back.
Oh. I don't remember him.
He was in charge of the inpatient service over there and teaching, and then Mayo took him back to run their inpatient service. It was a very excellent condition. There are things that left out, but
Well, we could
Go on,
probably
yeah.
go on now.
some stories I'd rather not tell.
Well, there are a lot of people that made an interesting contribution, and one of them I think of is Tony Semerad. Remember Tony?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. There were things that Tony could do and things that Tony knew that the rest of us...
Did you ever get anything from Miss Clausen?
No, I haven't, but I think that I should talk to her.
I don't know anybody in a position like that, but it's better, most fill the positions better.
She was
most
just
of the
great.
faculty. couldn't because they had something in their problem that put them at crossing.
Yeah. And you could trust her never to say the wrong thing or to reveal something that shouldn't
No,
be talked
no.
about, you know.
And she never played on her friendship with me, how to influence me because the friendship was in there. She'd tell me what she learned was straightforward. But, she was a great cook. She is a great cook. So I was lucky with Miss Clausen and Joan Martin.
Yes.
I wish she called Lottie the other day, called the house, but just heard I was sick last. She runs that department down in Texas. The two people I've had here visitors recruit Joan at the same time. The Chandler department of UCLA and the Chandler department of Oklahoma was now the Chandler department of UCLA. And they both, the university never paid for the pay, but she was close to the highest paid secretary, including Chris, in the university, but still, Oklahoma offered double whatever I was paying. She came from there. I advised her, so she was having a recent one, but I didn't want to lose her.
Yes.